Look closely at the edge of a suburban roof where rusted steel meets damp concrete. A gray feather catches the morning breeze, suspended for a moment above the quiet grid of pavement, cars, and manicured lawns. Beneath that feather sits a weaver bird, holding a strip of dry palm leaf between the serrated edges of its beak. It does not possess hands, thumbs, or flexible fingers. It has no blueprint drawn on paper, no spatial modeling software, and no tools forged in fire. Yet within the span of a single afternoon, this creature will perform structural engineering that rivals human architecture. It will push, loop, pull, and tie a precise series of overhand knots, anchoring raw plant fiber against shear wind shear, using only raw force, rotational tension, and calculated geometry. We often look at the animal kingdom through the comfortable lens of instinct, assuming that complex structures are merely automated scripts written into DNA. We dismiss the avian nest as an involuntary reflex, an automatic assembly line driven by seasonal hormones. But when you examine the structural stress tests, the material selection, and the real-time problem-solving of these avian architects, that convenient explanation collapses. Instinct cannot adjust for a sudden gust of lateral wind that threatens to shear a woven joint. Instinct cannot calculate the exact tensile strength of a damp pine needle compared to a brittle oak leaf. What we are witnessing across backyards, rainforest canopies, and urban power grids is not a passive biological routine. It is physical intelligence operating at the absolute limit of biomechanical design. Consider the intricate world of the tailorbird, hidden deep within the humid understory of a Southeast Asian forest. The bird selects two broad, living leaves growing on adjacent branches. To transform these flat surfaces into a three-dimensional shelter, it must first execute a precise mechanical preparation. Using its sharp, awl-like beak, the bird pierces a series of perfectly spaced holes along the margins of both leaves. The spacing is not random. If the punctures are too close together, the leaf tissue will tear under stress. If they are too far apart, the structural seal will fail. The bird then harvests spider silk or long plant fibers, threading the raw material through the opposing holes. To prevent the thread from slipping back through the leaf wall, the bird manipulates the fiber ends, fraying and knotting them into tiny, expanded rivets. The leaves are pulled together, curved into a living, seamless pouch that conceals the nest within the natural foliage. This is not merely gathering debris. This is textile engineering, tension control, and active manipulation of organic matter. Step back and analyze the sheer physical load required for these feats. An avian brain, often smaller than a single walnut, must constantly process fluid dynamics, gravitational torque, and material friction. Watch a male village weaver construct a suspended nest from the tip of a flexible acacia branch. The outer ring is the critical anchor. The bird wraps a flexible strip of grass around the structural twig, holding one end firm against the bark with its foot, while using its beak to loop the free end over, under, and back through the initial coil. It generates a self-tightening slipknot. If the loop is too loose, the entire weight of the future brood will pull the nest into the river below. If the loop is wrapped with too much tension, the dry grass fiber will snap before the weave is secured. The bird adjusts its grip, testing the flexibility of the plant strip by bending it against its beak, measuring resistance before committing the piece to the frame. In the arid landscapes of Australia, the satin bowerbird takes structural design a step further, crossing the boundary from functional shelter into complex spatial displays. The male constructs an avenue of upright twigs, carefully aligned along a precise north-south axis. The structural alignment is deliberately calibrated to control how ambient sunlight hits the display area during peak viewing hours. But the construction of the parallel walls is only the structural foundation. The bird then paints the inner surfaces. It crushes dark charcoal or chewed berries in its beak, mixing the pigment with saliva to create a thick, viscous paste. Holding a piece of porous bark as a natural applicator, the bowerbird spreads the dark mixture along the vertical twigs, creating a high-contrast backdrop for its collection of bright blue objects. This is the application of liquid coatings, spatial orientation, and environmental control executed by an organism without hands or formal training. When structural integrity is compromised, these birds do not abandon their blueprints. They adapt. In laboratory stress tests, when researchers intentionally cut key structural threads of a developing nest or introduce synthetic materials like nylon cord and wire, the builders do not freeze in a loop of broken instinct. They alter their technique. They test the synthetic fiber's friction coefficient against their beak, increase the number of wraps to compensate for slick plastic surfaces, and re-anchor critical load points. They evaluate physical properties in real time, shifting their mechanical strategy to match the structural reality of the materials available. The myth of the simple bird brain was built on an old evolutionary misconception that avian neuroanatomy lacked a complex cerebral cortex. For decades, science misread the smooth surface of the bird brain as a sign of primitive design. Modern neurobiology reveals a vastly different truth. Avian brains are packed with hyperdense neuronal clusters, organizing complex processing networks within a tight, lightweight volume optimized for flight. This dense neural architecture enables rapid spatial mapping, fine motor control, and continuous sensory motor feedback loops. Every time a bird weaves a knot, it processes tactile feedback from the tip of its beak, calculating material elasticity, wind velocity, and structural load simultaneously. Look closely at a finished nest hanging from a high-voltage power line in the heart of a bustling city. The structure incorporates dried grass, discarded copper wire, plastic zip ties, and shredded newspaper. It is anchored to an artificial lattice designed by human engineers, built to withstand thermal expansion and high winds. The bird did not read our blueprints, nor did it share our language. Yet using only a heavy beak, precise spatial judgment, and a relentless drive for structural perfection, it has integrated its design into our industrial grid. The hands of human builders took centuries to master the principles of tension, compression, and joinery. The bird carries those same laws of physics within the silent, calculated motion of its skull, building the modern world one knot at a time. The physical brilliance of the avian architect extends beyond the structural mechanics of plant fibers in unwoven grass. It reaches into a far more complex cognitive territory, the retention of structural memory, the passing of architectural traditions, and the persistence of long-term spatial awareness. When an avian architect constructs a shelter, it is not working on a blank canvas. It carries an internal, highly detailed blueprint informed by past failures, physical trials, and spatial maps that survive across multiple seasons. In a classic field experiment designed to probe the cognitive depth of nest design, researchers presented wild weaver birds with a chaotic mix of natural twigs and artificial colored rods. Some materials were supple and green, others were brittle, dry, or smoothed to a slick finish. The birds did not blindly grab the nearest fragment. Instead, they conducted a series of rapid physical stress tests before committing a single piece to the frame. A crow will pick up a twig, press it firmly against the rough bark of an oak branch, torque its beak to evaluate flex, and drop the material instantly if the internal tension fails to meet an invisible threshold. This is a real-time material analysis, a cognitive filter that screens out defective components before structural integrity is compromised. This spatial intelligence becomes even more striking when we examine how birds navigate memory across vast landscapes. The Clark's nutcracker, a bird inhabiting the high-altitude pine forests of North America, constructs no woven nests, yet its architectural feat is buried beneath the earth. Each autumn, a single nutcracker will harvest and bury up to 90,000 pine seeds across thousands of distinct subterranean caches spread over hundreds of square kilometers of mountainous terrain. Months later, beneath a heavy blanket of winter snow that completely alters the visual topography of the forest floor, the nutcracker returns. It digs through the freezing snowpack with surgical precision, recovering over 80% of its hidden stores. This is not a matter of smell or random searching. It is episodic memory operating as an active, three-dimensional mapping system. Neurobiological imaging of the nutcracker reveals an exceptionally enlarged hippocampus, the brain region responsible for spatial memory and navigation. The bird does not merely remember where it hit a seed. It records the precise geometric relationships between static landmark features, a jagged granite boulder, a fallen pine trunk, a specific crease in the hillside. if a human experimenter subtly shifts those landmarks in controlled field trials. The bird adjusts its excavation path by the exact distance the visual marker was moved. The bird's mind constructs a living, persistent grid of the landscape, holding tens of thousands of coordinates in hyperdense neural storage. When this level of spatial calculation intersects with social learning, architecture becomes culture. In the dense rainforests of New Caledonian crows do not just build nests, they manufacture specialized, standardized toolkits from living vegetation. A crow will select a spiny leaf from the screw pine tree, make a precise series of deliberate snips along the leaf margin using the serrated edge of its bill, and peel away a tapered, hooked probe. The bird uses this tool to extract protein-rich grubs from deep within decaying wood. Crucially, different populations of crows across the island manufacture distinctly different tool designs. Some regions craft wide, blunt probes, while others produce delicate, multi-hooked instruments. Young crows spend months watching elders select raw materials, observe the precise angle of the cuts, and practice working the leaf margins with their own juvenile beaks. This is not genetic programming hardwired into a species. This is the transmission of material culture, an architectural design language passed down through social observation across generations. The true testament to avian cognitive flexibility, however, lies in how these master builders react when human civilization expands into their ancient territories. As concrete replaces forest canopies and steel girders supplant ancient oaks, the avian brain does not break under the pressure of rapid environmental disruption. It adapts with radical efficiency. Consider the urban crows of Tokyo and London. Confronted with smooth glass facades and polished steel beams, where natural anchorage is impossible, these birds have re-engineered their building techniques. They scavenge heavy wire coat hangers from urban balconies, interweaving the rigid steel loops with flexible plastic strips to form indestructible, high-tension nest foundations perched atop bustling power transformers. The wire frames provide the heavy tensile strength needed to resist urban wind currents, while the inner lining is padded with shredded insulation, fibrous moss, and discarded human hair. To witness an avian architect at work in an urban landscape is to watch an ancient cognitive apparatus operating on modern materials. A crow perched on a rusted iron railing, holding a length of copper wire in its dark beak, is not a creature lost in a human world. It is a calculating engineer analyzing weight, friction, and resistance. It feels the vibration of the city beneath its talons, measures the angle of the sun against the concrete wall, and adjusts its grip to secure the next structural joint. The traditional boundary we have drawn between human intelligence and animal instinct is rapidly dissolving under the weight of modern cognitive science. We once believed that complex construction, tool modification, material selection, and abstract spatial mapping were the exclusive domain of primates with flexible hands and massive cerebral cortexes. But high above our streets, hidden within the dense foliage of backyard trees and anchored to high-voltage power lines, a silent revolution of physical engineering unfolds every day. The bird does not require hands to master the physical laws of our universe. It holds the principles of leverage, structural load, friction, and spatial geometry entirely within the sharp focus of its eye and the subtle torque of its beak. As the morning light filters through the pine needles and catches the polished frame of a finished nest, we are left with a quiet, undeniable revelation. We are not the only architects of this planet. We are simply walking beneath a world built by masters who have been engineering the skies for millions of years.